Hello everybody! This week's assembly themes are going to be about relationships. So I thought I'd start by reading a story to you called Frankenstein by a man called M.P. Robertson, and he's the author and the illustrator of this really good book. And the book is published by Francis Lincoln Children Books, and we're going to learn it. We're going to use it to just ask a few questions about relationships and what they are and what they mean. Now, Franklin P. Shelley often asked his mother if he could have a brother or sister, but she just said, "We'll see." But Frank knew what to do. If his mother wouldn't give him a brother, then he would build one of his own, and he would call him Stan. And you can see in this photo we've got Franklin, we've got his mum, and we've got this chap here who also lives in his house. I'm not too sure who he is yet. Could be a dad, could be an uncle, but there's definitely some relationships going on in that photo straight away. We've got the relationship between Mum and Franklin, and then we've got the relationship between these people and these people. I wonder what relationships you have in your house. I wonder who your relations are. Do you live with all your relations? Maybe you live with some of your relations, but not all of them. He obviously wants another little brother or sister. He's going to make one. Plans needed to be made. Parts needed to be found. He's gone to Byron's scrapyard. Slowly but surely, nut by bolt, sprocket by socket, Stan was coming together. At last, all that was left to do was charge Stan's battery and switch him on. The light in his chest began to glow, and then his eyes slowly creaked open. Stan was alive. At first, Stan was a little unsteady on his feet. There were a few slip-ups, and a nut or two that needed tightening. And that's because this is a new relationship. Frank and Stan are just getting to know each other. I wonder if there's anyone with whom you have recently had a new relationship. Somebody you're just getting to know. Perhaps somebody you've only met recently. If you're in school, it might be somebody who's in your class bubble that you didn't know before. Maybe it's even with a new teacher. For a baby brother, Stan was quite unusual. Frank's mum and dad thought that Stan was very different. It certainly doesn't look like my house at tea time. But soon, Stan was fitting in just fine. God, isn't he helpful? I don't know if you can spot anything a little bit different about Frank's mum yet. I think the author and the illustrator, Mr. Robertson, has given us some clues. Frank and Stan did everything together. They built amazing things and made a really big noise. That does look fun. You can see Frank and Stan have a really close relationship now. They do everything together. Then one day, Frank's mum gave him a little surprise. Her name was Mary. first she was a bit boring and smelly. Oh dear. This looks like Frank is going to have to forge a new relationship now with somebody else in his house. This is a new one of his relations, his little sister. Soon she was crawling, walking, and climbing. But by the time she was 2, Mary still hadn't said a single word. It's quite unusual not to be speaking when you're 2, at all. Not completely unusual, but a little unusual. As his sister got bigger, Frank started spending more time with her, and less time with Stan. Stan felt left out. One snowy evening, he decided to leave. Oh dear. Can you think of a time when you felt left out? Maybe it's because there were 2 people and you were the 3rd one, so you felt a little left out. Maybe it's because there were 2 people who really wanted to do something together and you weren't invited. See if you can think of a time that you felt left out. And if you're feeling quite brave, can you think of a time where you might have left out somebody else? It's easily done. We've all done it, I think. Stan stumbled through the deep dark woods. He slipped across the frozen lake and clambered up the steep snowy mountain. And as Stan climbed, his clanking limbs felt heavier and heavier, and when he reached the top, he slumped down in the freezing snow. He just couldn't go any further. The light in his eyes faded, and the glow in his chest flickered out. Poor Stan. In the morning, Mum missed Stan. Dad missed Stan. Mary really missed Stan. Frank knew he must find his brother quickly before the snow melted. He followed Stan's tracks into the deep dark woods, across the frozen lake and up the steep snowy mountain. Snow began to fall. Frank couldn't see Stan anywhere, but just as he was about to give up, he saw something glinting in the moonlight. He shovelled away the snow, and there, lying cold and still, was Stan. Luckily Frank had a plan. In his rucksack he had a spare battery. Stan's eyes slowly creaked open, and Frank gave him a big "missed you" hug. And Stan stood up. His rusty joints creaked and groaned, but Frank had come prepared to help his friend. Can you think of a time when you've helped one of your friends who's fallen over or hurt themselves? It was a lot quicker on the way back down the mountain. And when Mary saw Stan, a big smile spread across her little face. And then she said her very first word. Stan! I think that was a relationship I hadn't spotted. I hadn't realised that Mary and Stan were so close. Now Frank has a big brother and a little sister, and when they are together they make a great, big, beautiful noise. I wonder who you make a great, big, beautiful noise with. I hope you get a chance to think about some of those questions I asked during the story, and we'll learn a little bit more about relationships later in the week. Goodbye.